time, I mean, the current situation is like this, and we can sort of explain and share context and, you know.
Hi, Susanna. You're on mute. Unmute your microphone.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Mazura.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mazura.
Hi, Prema. Nice to see you. You're moving. Or else
I'm
just
moving.
the voice.
Hello,
I miss you.
Yeah, miss you. Haven't seen you.
Yeah, 3 months now.
Hello.
Bloom. Mr. Bloom. Hello, Bloom. Is that Bloom?
Yeah. Viral.
He looks very different.
Hello, Mr. Joe Hasham and the great Farida American.
Got viral.
Mr. Blue. Mana abang gambar Orlando tu? Tak ada.
Then
Viral.
Hello, everyone.
Mariana here.
Hi,
Viral.
Shukri.
Hi, Mariana.
Hi, Mariana.
Yeah.
Wow, so many people. I can't keep up with them. Hello.
Excited.
Candy, you've got to turn your microphone on. Hello, Candy.
Hello everyone, how are
Hello,
you?
everyone.
Hi Sir Joseph.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Mr. Hanafi. Hello.
Yes. Good. Wait, I tukar headgear, okay?
Okay, tukar lah dia.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Hi, Shafitri.
Hi, Joe. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Again.
For the millionth time this month. No.
Okay.
Wow, who is this handsome fella here?
Yeah, so should we start?
Up to you.
Yes. Coming in? Yes. Yeah, so I think we will start. Warm evening to our panelists. Thank you for joining us today in our discussion on arts education, the road ahead post-pandemic. We have a big turnout of participants today. We have about 77 and we have about 130 registered from all sectors, the arts fraternities, other industries, students, researchers, artists and educators from Hong Kong, Australia, UK and Singapore. So hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And those of you all joining us on Zoom and also on our Facebook Live on the KLPAC site. So I'm Prema Ponadurai. I'm the head of department for the Liberal Arts and Humanities Department at the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Taylor's University. So our topic today is a very timely topic because the pandemic has definitely impacted all sectors of society, economies, and of course, the education sector has not been spared. Globally, we have not experienced such a shutdown like this since World War II, when the whole world was shut down on a similar scale. So we thought it would be timely to have this discussion, particularly on arts education, which is very physically and practical based, and encompassing the performing arts, dance, and music areas. So in our dialogue series today, this is a flagship initiative by the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Taylor's University, to provide a platform for societal and global discourse on political issues and to contribute towards nation building and development through social innovation. And this is definitely one area that we have all learned to be innovative in our ways. So to begin, let me quickly run through the guidelines for this forum. Please make sure your microphones are on mute if you're not speaking. You can also write in your questions in the chat box and we will try and get our speakers to answer them after their session. So put in your questions as the speakers are speaking. And also this session will be recorded. So it can be, you can access it later on. We will send you the link of the YouTube and on Facebook Live on the KLPAC. So without further ado, as they say, let's get the show on the road. I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Anandita Dasgupta, the head of School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Taylor's University, to say a few opening remarks.
Thank you,
Dr.
Prema.
Anandita.
Thank you, Prema. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of our guests. My name is Anindita, and it is my privilege and pleasure on behalf of Taylor's University and the Actors Studio to welcome you to today's webinar on the future of arts education. Ladies and gentlemen, when Taylor's University and the Actors Studio joined hands in August 2019 to launch the country's first Tutas Conservatory of Performing Arts, little did we imagine that barely 7 months later, we would be faced with such unprecedented circumstances as the ongoing pandemic, where our students would have to learn the arts via online mode. Our plan at that time in 2019, when we launched this program, was to train our students in the state-of-the-art facilities at the Kuala Lumpur Performing Arts Center, as well as the brand new facilities, especially built at Taylor's University campus for our Bachelor of Performing Arts degree. So the question that now stares squarely at our face is, if we as educators see this moment as an unsurmountable disruption or as a chance to recreate and redefine the very nature of our work, can the science of teaching of the arts be creatively reconceptualized in order to learn, for instance, a body movement by observing, reading, and perhaps listening to the teacher's online instruction? Is proficiency in creating high quality videos now a precondition for learning the arts? Now, how would this mode of learning prepare students for a live performance, maintaining social distance when they eventually learn to the classroom and the studio? There are many questions like that. And I think a lot of these questions will be addressed today by our eminent speakers. That many of you have taken time out of your busy day to be here serves as a reminder to us all just how important this topic is. And before I hand over to Prema Ponudurai, our moderator for today, I would like to welcome you once again and express my sincere gratitude to all the speakers today. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Doctor. So I would like to start with the introduction of our distinguished panel of arts practitioners and educators in their respective fields from Malaysia, Hong Kong, and London. First, we have the formidable arts couple, Dr. Farida American and Joe Hasham, OAM. They are both renowned actors, writers, producers, and directors who are the founders of the Actors Studio and artistic directors at KL PAC and Penang PAC. Currently, they are also adjunct professors at the Taylor's Bachelor of Performing Arts program at Taylor's. We also have Dr. Muhammad Said. Dr. Muhammad Said is the program director at the Bachelor of Performing Arts program at Taylor's University. His area of expertise is in music and has gained his PhD from the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. Besides teaching, he is also appointed Honorary Secretary of the Society of Malaysian Contemporary Composers and is currently appointed as the professional panel of Malaysian Qualification Agency in the field of music. So welcome, Dr. Said. We also have Mark Biu de Silva, actor director. Mark holds a Master's of Performing Arts from University Malaya and has won several awards at the Bo Cameroon Arts Award, Short and Sweet International Theatre Festival, and the Ada Theatre Awards. Welcome, Mark. We also have Prof. Dr. Joseph Gonzalez, globally renowned prolific choreographer and academician. Prof. Joseph is currently attached at the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts and is also an artistic director and founder at Ask Dance Company. He's also a visiting professor at the Taylor's Bachelor of Performing Arts program. Last but not least, we have Vic Sivalingam, a London-based theatre director and academician. He has earned his Masters in Fine Arts in Theatre Directing from the University of London and has worked at the Royal Shakespeare Company, the Old Vic Theatre, the Royal Court, to name a few. He's also directed in other UK and US actor training programs, including with the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, Brooklyn College, Temple University, and more. He's now a senior tutor at the London Academy of Dramatic Arts, LAMDA, and is a member of the Taylor's Industry Advisory Panel. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So to start our discussion, we have seen that although initially the RMO imposed by governments across the globe caused pandemonium to some extent, and the arts community has quickly been creative and have implemented innovative teaching methods to deliver their classes. So if our panelists will share with us today, as arts educators in your specialized fields, what challenges have you really faced during this pandemic in delivering of arts education? And what methods you have used to ensure learning continuity in your classes, and also with the restriction orders globally, what trends do you see emerging in arts education in your various disciplines, arts, dance, and music? So to start, can we have Joe and Farida to share your thoughts, practices, and the way forward for arts education in the country?
Thank you, Prema. Very well put. Farida has asked me to start because...
Yes, he's the boss.
No, I'm not the boss. She's asked me to start because my approach to this is probably not what a lot of you want to hear, okay? Because I believe the challenges that face us are creating many, many problems for us. I also believe that there are very good things happening because of the pandemic that we're going through at the moment, in the fact that many people, including Farida, are utilizing social media, are utilizing online services to work. But she will tell you about that. My idea of it is that, and it's something I've been taught and something that I've been teaching, if you can't smell it, you can't taste it. I'm speaking purely from an acting viewpoint. I'm not talking about dance. I'm not talking about any other field. I'm talking about acting. You can't smell it, you can't taste it. Because acting, what is acting? Acting is reacting. If you cannot react, it's very difficult. And I would find it extremely difficult to teach acting online. I could set work patterns for my students. I can set them research to do. I can set them a whole host of other things that they can do. But when it comes to the action, reaction that is totally needed in terms of teaching acting, I would find that very difficult. And I don't think, it's almost like a half-baked pavlova. You know, I started off with saying, if you can't smell it, you can't taste it. So now I'm talking about pavlovas. You can't tell I'm Australian, can you? So from that point of view, I would find it extremely difficult to successfully and to 100% to my satisfaction, teach acting online. Farida?
Like what Anandita said just now, that this thing happened like a bolt from the blue. I'm not sure whether those were the exact words, but it did come to us like a bolt from the blue. Just when we were getting ourselves very excited about the programs that we have laid out for the year 2020. And this is Wawasan 2020, supposed to be a great year for the country. Etc., etc. And so then it happened. We were at the Actor Studio and KLPSC, we were preparing ourselves for a wonderful musical or a play set to music. And the title is Bollywood Dreams. So we didn't want to let go. We didn't want to give up. We wanted to kind of tell ourselves that we can fight this, we can live with this. So what the writer for Bollywood Dreams is Mark Bo De Silva, and also another co-writer who is currently in New York, who left for New York just before the pandemic started. So what Mark and I and Joe also did was we created an atmosphere where we had our 5 main actors. We couldn't have the whole of the ensemble of dancers. We had our 5 main actors, and we created the scenarios and the scenes and the relationships that each of the actors was going to be having with the other.
You did it
There
online.
were, pardon?
You did it online.
Yeah, we did it online, and there were 2 boys. There were 2 boys in the play, and there were 2 aunties in the play, and there was one Mr. Gopal. So we found this exciting, although in a sense frustrating. But we put the frustration aside and on the excitement, and met only once a week and prepared ourselves for the following week and so on and so forth. However, we found, ladies and gentlemen, much to our chagrin, the process could not develop into the far-reaching ideas that Bollywood dreams would eventually need. But we're not giving up, of course. We're not giving up because we are still going to go on with it. And the actors are also prepared to go on with it. The ensemble are learning all the songs and so on. But of course, we cannot do the choreography. I must ask Joseph, how the hell we are going to do the choreography? 12 ensemble members and learning the dances. But anyway, that is our little example of dealing with the pandemic, which I believe it's not at all complete in any sense of the word. That's what I can share with you, and I hope you can sense the frustration that we have with us to want to try and do something, and yet it is being stopped. There is a huge what's the word? A huge
Roadblock.
A huge roadblock. Yes, a huge roadblock before us. But in our discussions, I would love to hear from you. Given this kind of a circumstance, how do we move on? How do we move on? Right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe and Farida. Yeah, so definitely there's no denying that there are many barriers faced, and hence we're having this discussion today. But from what I see is we see the resilience of the performing arts fraternity. We have adapted very well, I think. As you said, you recreated situations in order to get your Hollywood dreams play going on, right? Working with whatever constraints you have. So do you think now that this has come about, we have a question here, do you think that ICT will be an important skill, digital skills, mastery of skills for performing arts to combine music, the technical? Do you think that is an important way ahead in the future of education, arts?
I think, Prema, we need to imagine new ways of being and new ways of doing. So yes, it is certainly a possibility that we would need to look at that. I mean, we would need to experiment with that. We can't just wear blinkers and say, no, we're not going to do it. Yeah, it will happen. God willing, it will happen.
And we have a question here from Malay. During this lockdown, what other skills can an actor get to be ready for 2021? So what should actors do during this time to reskill or upskill in
Yeah.
their areas?
They can certainly look after their vocal aspects of their profession. They can work on their vocals, on their breathing. They can keep their body fit. They can you see, all of this will prepare them for. It's just like, you know, a guitar. If you pick up a guitar and it needs to be tuned. So same with an actor's voice, same with an actor's body.
They can, sorry.
So go ahead.
They can read as many books and plays as they can get their hands on, and they can watch as many films and plays that they can find. And in this pandemic as well, we get the whole world showing wonderful works of art, including in Malaysia. We get wonderful works of art that are shown for you for free, which you can also make use of, watch them, be critical of them, and sharpen your minds that way.
Okay, thank you, Joy and Farida. We'll keep, if there's any more questions coming in, we'll keep that going as well. So can I invite Dr. Muhammad Said? Could you share your points on the topic based on your music perspective, Dr. Said?
Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Prema. Thank you, Prem, for the introduction. Okay, so I'm Said, and I'm going to talk about from the perspective of music education. I'm going to focus more on music teaching and methods that I've used previously. Probably I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. All right. So everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So from the music education perspective, I must say that theoretical element in music is quite huge, quite important as well. It's probably more than 40 or 50%, the theoretical element of it, and the rest are the practical elements. So in music, you know, I can simply say that in practical elements in music, we can divide it into two. You know, we have individual practical practice and also in group practical practice. So individual practical practice is basically instrumental study where students spend hours in room practicing on their own instruments. You know, so basically it's a practical, but it doesn't involve social distancing. You know, that doesn't involve any social interactions with other people. So they can always develop their own skills individually. Same goes to oral skills, music arrangement, music composition. You know, where they spend more and more times within their own creativity, you know, and also electronic music and digital music, where basically this type of practical is basically one-on-one, or maybe one person developing their own skills. And another practical part of in music education is in group, where the students and also the musician needs to spend time with other people. You know, they have to do duo, they have to do trio, quartet, and also to form a band, chamber orchestra performance, and all that. So for this type of practical, you know, when involve many people around them, I must agree with Joe. You know, I must really agree with Joe, because we have to be in a very physical state of situation where students need to learn how to listen to other instruments. You know, students need to learn on how to see the conductor, how to play their lines, you know, together with their colleagues, with other sections in orchestra. So it has to be in the same room with other people. That we cannot argue on that, you know. So, but let's talk about the individual practical elements in music education. Okay, so in individual practical element in music education, they can always spend time learning about their instruments, you know, learning about this oral skills, where they have to listen to a lot of music and do analysis and all that. But challenges. Okay, when we talk about challenges, this is what I have experienced last semester when I had a short course that I'm offering to public, where the issue was the students are not familiar with musical symbols. Okay, music is always about symbols and how we work with symbols, right? So the assessment is to play the rhythm. They have to sing, or they have to clap the rhythm by reading the musical symbols. Okay, so the objective is to be able to perform rhythmic lines. Okay, that's the objective of the lesson. But the difficulties that I'm facing with the students was they couldn't work with the symbols, and I have to do some sort of like a demonstration, you know, how to write this notation, how to write this symbol, how to write rest, how to write crotchet and all that. So that difficulties changed my perspective towards dealing with the visual, you know. So usually in regular face-to-face sessions, we will always use whiteboard to, you know, to show the students how to write this symbol, how to arrange this symbol, how do we sing this symbol, how do we clap this symbol, right? But during COVID, I've you know, I've convinced myself that I need to build my own light board, you know. So what you see here on screen is actually my self-made light board. It is actually a glass where lights basically go out. Lights basically travels out with the pens that I wrote on that glass. So
Want to change your slide, Dr. Syed? We can't see that.
Oh, sorry.
Slide.
Okay, I think I cannot do. Can I just this one? Can you see
Yeah,
this?
okay,
one?
now we've got it.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you see here is actually a light board. You know, so it's a glass where there's a LED lighting below that glass where the light basically travels whenever I wrote down something on that glass. So with this method, I think it is really helpful for students to actually understand how to use the symbol, how to arrange the symbol, and basically how to sing the symbol. You know, so what I'm trying to say here is the most important thing in education is actually to get the learning outcomes achieved, you know. So in many other, you know, you can be as creative as possible, you know, as long as you can achieve the learning outcome. So with this method that I've explored here, I think it really helped the students to get the best results, you know, to get to achieve the objective. All right. So another thing that I really want to share is the biggest lesson from me as educator. You know, so usually in regular class, you know, we always dealing with students who are very, you know, not really involved in the class. You know, sometimes not giving full commitments, not listening to you specifically. You know, so during this COVID and during this online learning, what I learned the most is actually to trust your students. You know, you've given all the information, you've given all the things that they have to do. You know, all the instructions clearly. You know, you ask them if they have any question. You know, you entertain all the questions from them. But one thing that I think as educator we also need to put trust to our students, and then from there, you know, we can see how they actually explore more and more in the topics. You know, so flexibility in your assessment, flexibility in your approach, it is really a key, you know, for the students to explore more in the topics. That's what I believe, and that's, I think, as an educator, we need to, you know, to train, or maybe to consider furthermore, right? So as a result, you know, these are the example that I received from my students, and I got around 40 students enrolled, and I received almost 30 submissions at the end of the course, which I think it's a very wonderful process. I can see all the learning objectives achieved successfully. So I think, yeah, I think it's really possible for music, at least, you know, to get individual practical elements works within this online learning. But again, with when it comes to orchestra performance, when it comes to chamber performance, or when it comes to group performance, it has to be in a group. It has to work together, and all those skills need to be learned and to be tested during that session. So I think
thank you.
that's basically all.
Thank you,
From
Dr.
the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So definitely flexibility. I think this whole COVID pandemic has pushed us academics, I think, to really stretched us to be creative and how we are going to go about. I think that's that interaction, I think, from students and the lecturer is definitely enhanced by this situation. We have a question here from Roshan Pereira. How do you conduct practical assessments? Can you just touch on that?
Okay, so there are a lot of there are many practical assessment that we can assess. Okay, let's one of my friends, he teach violin, so he spoke to me. We did a discussion, and then saying that how do I assess my students? If the students can't even tune the violin, so how they want to play scales, how they want to play a tune. So from the discussion, we agreed that when you focus on small, I might say small objective, small objective of learning, it is quite easy to achieve. Let's say when we talk about tuning the violin, all right, so we basically we have 4 strings. Okay, so maybe the objective for today's lesson is actually to get the smallest string in tune. That's a very small learning objective that we can do. So from that session, you are going to teach the students just to achieve that learning objective. So what I'm trying to say here, when you want to assess a practical assessment, you have to very focus on what things that you want to achieve. Make it smaller, make it concise, make it focused, so it's easier for you to achieve. And then once you achieve that, and then you can add another objective. So we have to go back to square one, to get everything very detailed, in terms of practicals and so that we can add more and more objectives.
Dr. Syed, are you there? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Syed. Definitely simplicity in assessments is one way that we will see the trend in arts education moving forward. Thank you. Mark, can I invite you to add to the discussion in your area of performing arts?
Thank you, Prema. I would like to share what I went through for the past few months. Let me just say, in March, I wouldn't imagine I'd be here doing a webinar, but here I am. Tell you how I got to this position, right? So when the MCO was first announced, I was about to finish an acting module. And so we were about to start rehearsals for our final showcase, which was a device piece. And then suddenly I first heard from Prema, then I heard from Syed, maybe you won't get an audience. So I thought, what does that mean, right? The poster is done, everything is ready. Then I realized you really would not get an audience. There will be no performance. So I was a bit lost at first. I started thinking, how do we adapt a final practical assessment into an online one? How do we shift from physical rehearsals to an online one, right? So I had my final actor's circle. We were sitting on the floor. Can you imagine sitting on the floor, side by side, touching the floor for the very last time? Now I look back, and that was the last time I saw those kids. That was the last time they saw me. And one of the things we talked about in the actor's circle was, how are we now going to create? How can we tell our stories in a new way, right? And so we went back to the root of what we were doing, which was devising. And the word itself means invention. And then we thought, maybe now it's not just the story. It's not just about the words that we want to use and the stage and the audience. Now it's more expensive. Now it's the vastness, it's this great beyond, and there's this possibility of whatever is going to happen just by having this imagination and just discussion from this discussion. How are we going to do this now? How are we going to tell our stories in a new way? And I say again, I'm no online expert, no tech expert. I believe my students at the time, they were a bit more expert than I was. So what do we do, right? How do we continue our process? I think that was what we were very concerned with at that time. We were in 8, we had 6 more weeks. How do we continue? How do we finish this? I mean, in drama class, it was never about how do we finish this quickly. But at that time, there was this need to continue and to finish. So how do we do this, right? So I had 2 strategies, but now if I go back, I think I was like a headless chicken, you know, just plucking whatever I could to make the class happen. I think for this webinar, I have 2 strategies, right? The first strategy was, teachers, I have to admit now, sometimes I go into class, I just goring the class, right? Because I've done this for a while. So I can just go in and goring. But now I can't goring anymore. I cannot. Gosh. I almost feel like the students can tell if I'm goringing now, you know? So what I did was I started being a bit more creative. I started imagining, what if we had Romeo and Juliet set in the pandemic and they only had Zoom to send their love letters, right? To send their love letters. And what if Cinderella had the evil stepmother pressing freeze every time, and then they are frozen in their screens so they can't reach one another anymore? So we didn't do Cinderella, but the idea was, now how do we become a bit more creative? So, you know, in our classes, we set parameters for our students. I found this as the added parameter. Now I tell them, okay, this is what you cannot do. You cannot meet one another. You cannot touch one another. How do you create, right? And when I was discussing with some colleagues, they did mention, somehow you'll be amazed at what the kids come up with, because as I mentioned, they are more tech savvy than I was, right? So I saw creations that were mainly video stuff, right? They were words like Zoom and not Zoom. There are other stuff that they are using. Open Shot, Video Pro, all these things became everyday jargon. So I gave them this extra perimeter, and then I got them to think out of the box, right? What if, like I mentioned just now, what if Romeo and Juliet had only Zoom to express their love? So that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did was a bit more boring. I went back to the module objectives, right? I wanted to still work on their voice. I still wanted to work on their body, their text, their relationship. Can I still do that without meeting face to face? I have been doing for the past 2-3 months. To be honest, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Like we start the class with theater games, right? I have adapted my theater games for online. But of course, there's always this worry, are they really doing it? You know, they tell me, hey, you know, I'm not dressed properly today, so I don't want to show you my face. But I have to trust them lah, that they're really doing it, right? So I have adapted all my theater games to go online. For example, in the past, I would get them to run in a room to grab an object which was made of wood. Now I say, you have the whole house, run around your house and get it by video. So these are all the things that I have adapted for Zoom. And I tell them this, I say that, hey, you know, last time in Taylor's, if you're lucky, you get 20 people to come and see your show. We will force the lecturers to come, force Prema to come, force Dr. Zai to come. But now I tell them the audience is the entire world. So your work better be solid, right? Because everybody can see it if we put it online. So there is this, there's this thing now, the audience is anyone, everyone around the world. So that's the thing which I've introduced to them. Moving forward, I don't have a blueprint to move forward, but what I think is now I have this weird hybrid of what used to be and what can be, right? Now we are suddenly doing warm-ups with our mothers laughing at us from the kitchen, reciting a monologue to the computer while the brother gives us a funny look. So this is what the new drama class looks like. Is it perfect? Well, I I find the online world a funny world. I'm always worried if I might get a cold, it might get cold and freeze on me. I'm always trying to seek its attention, for I never really know if it's looking back at me. So of course I miss the nuances. I miss catching a magic moment in rehearsal, telling my student, that's it, that's the look I want, that's the look that the character needs, right? I miss that gentle tap on the shoulder, that pause before the speech begins. I miss all those things. But now, what can we do, right? So I start thinking now, what can I do in my classes to differentiate myself from YouTube, from the net? Because really, now you say online class, they will tell you online. You go and want to study, you want to study on this way of acting online, I can Google, I'll get 20 sites telling me how to do it. So how do I deliver an experience which YouTube cannot deliver, Google cannot deliver? What makes my online presence special? So I don't know. I'm trying my best to be as human as possible, because I think we are faced with this very inhuman presence in front of us, this inhuman presence. And with this barrier, I think we have to be even more human, right? So I'm reaching into as many outlets as I can. I'm using YouTube, Zoom, all those video programs I mentioned. I'm using WhatsApp. I'm telling them, you know, we can do tutorials one-to-one via video, WhatsApp video. So I am, like I said just now, like a headless chicken plucking from the air, but I believe this will be the way forward for the next few months. Hopefully by the end of the year, things will be different. So yeah, I would like to just end my session with just sharing a bit of what my students have done. So you'll get a better idea of what I was saying just now. So let me see, yeah. So, yeah, let me start the slideshow. So, yeah, so this is my smart quote. Okay, so this was the world 2 months ago. This was what we were, right? This was our rehearsals in week 8, 10. So this was what we were doing. And then suddenly we had this wonderful news that we would not be able to do this anymore. So how do we tell our stories in a new way? So we have now created videos, and we are streaming live, doing scenes live. But right now, I'm depending a lot on video work. I've also invited, oh yeah, one thing I want to add, it's very easy to invite your friends to come into classes now. In the past, when I invite my friends, they'll ask you how much lah, you know, are you going to pay me lah? But now I say, hey, you're at home, just come into my Zoom. So I've invited some of my friends like Holy Cheng, Zaf, these are my colleagues from Kielpak. So they have come in, and this is Zaf, he gave a little tutorial on Mac Mulong. So I find this very enriching. I'm trying to make the class as engaging as possible, so they just don't hear me talk for the 1 hour. And I'll just end today with this. This is a line from one of my students for her project. Never stop dancing for me and for yourself. Yeah, so that's my takeaway. Thank you very much, Prema, and everybody
Thank
else.
you, Mark. Definitely, we see that the point about innovation and creativity coming through and through. I think from what Joe and Farida said as well, we understand, you know, we don't have the look and the feel and the smell of things anymore. So how we adjust and be flexible, and also seizing opportunity, with all the actors and artists that are available, and being resourceful and using them now to come in to do lectures and guest lectures. I think that's a very good takeaway. I have a question for you from Melanie. Melanie is asking, can you hear me, Mark? You look like you're frozen a bit. Mark? Okay, maybe we will come back to Mark's question later. Can I invite Prof. Joseph? May I invite you to share your thoughts on the issue today, Prof. Joseph?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, thank you to Taylors for having me on this esteemed panel. I'd just like to share my screen, and I'll be talking over the slides. All right. So I'm looking at arts education post-pandemic and focusing specifically on e-learning practicalities and possibilities. And this is where we are at now. It's a crisis. And why is it in plural? It's in plural because Hong Kong has been battered since June of 2019. We have been battered and we keep being battered. It was the demonstrations that really disrupted our lives, and we had to end the semester early, and we had to make all kinds of adjustments because people couldn't get to work, the students couldn't go home, and it was really the most unexpected experience of my life. And that was followed by COVID-19. And here we are in this situation today. Dance teaching and learning, as you know it, would focus on technique classes, rehearsals, performances, master classes, residencies. And this is just an example of the kind of work that we do here at the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. And I, in this school, teach in more conventional spaces. So I look after the academic subjects. The question is, in this crisis, what has the institutional and the personal response has been? I decided to use this time, as difficult as it was, to become a project for my own learning. And I approached it from the point of view of practice as research. And from the array of causes that I teach, I decided to just select one of them that I would focus on and try to understand what it meant of rethinking e-learning. And I used Norm Friesen's work, foundations, methods, and practices, looking at blended learning, which designates the range of possibilities presented by combining internet and digital media with established forms that require the physical co-presence of teacher and student, and the concept of flipped classrooms, an instructional strategy delivering instructional content outside of the classroom. And I selected the Western Dance Perspectives, which is a 14-hour course that discusses the development of Western dance from pre-King Louis XIV to present-day innovations. And anybody who knows me will know why I have Sylvie Guillaume on the screen. The problem statement is that the course can become merely about recalling events, names, places, dates in chronological order. The question I asked myself, how can I make this course more interactive, especially at this time? And number two, how do I keep holding on to the principles of good practice for undergraduate education? I realized that I had to use what was available at the Hong Kong Academy more effectively. And we used a student learning system called Canvas. I believe other Malaysian universities use similar tools. And this is really very, very exciting journey for me. I learned how to share my notes, create assignments, and use online resources on multiple screens, moving seamlessly from one to the other. I created quizzes so that the students would be able to respond before the next class began the following week. I used Zoom, another tool which I get very excited about now, that encourages participation and giving prompt feedback. And very interestingly, I found that there are many students who really enjoy interacting in this way as opposed to face-to-face learning as well, where they might be shy in a classroom. So of course, every student is different. And one of the most useful tools and features of the Zoom would be the breakout rooms. So after a chunk of information is given to the students, I break them up into rooms and allow them to discuss these questions with each other. I also have the opportunity to get into that room if they have a question for me and leave them to converse with each other, get a report when they come back. But 80% of our school's curriculum is practice-based courses: ballet, Chinese dance, contemporary dance technique, partnering work, contact improvisation, repertoire, folk dance, and we have a huge component of dance science as well. Now, for the practical components, we just decided that we're going to do 6 weeks of teaching, where the emphasis was going to be on movement fundamentals that were technique-specific exercises. So all the teachers who teach these different courses had to get together and decide between them what was absolutely essential to be taught to the students. And they decided it would be floor work, bar work for Chinese dance, ballet, and contemporary dance as well. And because Hong Kong has a very unique situation of very limited spaces, the apartments are generally not more than 400 square feet, and the students live with their families and extended families. So it's very, very cramped conditions. So there's minimal center practice, little or no jumping, because you're living in high-rise buildings. And the focus is on conditioning, strengthening, and stretching. And what about improvisation and composition? We did conduct these courses during the 6 weeks in the restricted spaces. We had choreography that was pre-recorded, and we gave it to the students to watch in their own time. A lot of the focus was on movement research, and we focused on the concept of thinking through dance. So journaling became very important, the journaling of ideas, feelings, physical sensations. Interestingly, for those of you who practice will know about contact improvisation and partnering. And during this time, we did not offer these courses. For myself, in this reflective journey, I decided to use Kolb's reflective cycles. There are many. You look at your experience, and I reflected on how I was teaching, what I was delivering, what I could learn from it, what works, how long each chunk of information should be, what kind of videos do I find, do I make them shorter because the attention span is shorter? And I had a lovely, lovely students that really enjoyed being on this journey with me. And in fact, many of them were actually the ones who assisted me with my computer skills, which were quite minimal. And here is some of the feedback from the students. And they were talking about, oh, sir, it was a fun class, but I think I forgot to mute myself. Did you hear me laugh? Oh, a lot of information to digest. The good thing we have time after class to do it. To some students who said, sitting in front of a computer is a tragedy. I'm exhausted. And then we need to watch many times before I can understand or follow the movement. So it's complicated. So the students' feedback was best to keep it simple and effective. Loved the class, very productive. So space was also a problem. So post-review revisions from traditional classrooms to, I was thinking that this course that I want to deliver now, I want to only deliver this online. But again, I'm speaking only of academic courses. And in the academy here, we have really state-of-the-art technology, Panopto, which are installed in some of the largest studios. And these are about 6 cameras that can film the teacher from different angles. And the teacher then decides which angle will be edited and sent to the students. So it's pretty incredible. The mention of assessment tasks and rubrics had to be discussed and thought through very carefully, ensuring breaks are given at proper times, ensure safe dance practice, and pastoral care for the students in this time was also very vital. So dance is a deeply personal, visceral, and embodied teaching and learning experience. In the teaching of dance and other arts, e-learning for me and for everyone that has spoken does not and cannot replace face-to-face experience. However, e-learning can and does enhance the experience. It provides a certain degree of autonomy and flexibility. It is important to embed e-learning into the curriculum and not as an afterthought. And this requires a paradigm shift when we are preparing for the future. And it opens the mind to greater possibilities as to how and where the arts and dance can take place. What is hugely important, the support of institutional support for online teaching and learning. The preparation of teachers and students for online engagement and rethinking strategies. And here in Hong Kong in the last 2 months, if I'm not teaching, I'm attending a course. If I'm not attending a course, I'm doing assignments for myself. So the learning curve for myself has been really incredible, and I can't believe that I'm doing these things. I'm so excited and happy for myself, you know. So careful consideration of issues of privacy, equity, and parity. is the internet available to everybody? I have students who work and live in villages in the Philippines. They don't necessarily, they are not accessible, internet is not accessible to them. How do we navigate these strategies? However, at the end of the day, here at this academy and most institutions around the world, we're looking at graduate attributes. And what are we looking for? Aside from the fact that we want brilliant dancers and choreographers, we want strong communication, collaboration skills, expertise in technology, innovative and creative thinking skills, and the ability to solve problems. As a footnote, our face-to-face classes will begin and it will last for 10 weeks. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Joseph.
Thank you.
Great insight. Yes, Hong Kong, I think, has been hit from one thing to the other. So you've been in this mode for an extended period of time. Yes, and Klob's experimental learning is, I think, the essence of performing arts because it's all through practice, right? Can I just share one question or two questions with you? Can you suggest some from Jazili? Can you suggest some resources of digital skills learning platforms for that is used in Hong Kong? Maybe from your experience, what are some of the
so at the moment, this is the only tool that we're using. So we just use Canvas and we use the Zoom platforms. So between the two, they are linked, so we can just link the two platforms together. I believe there are universities in Malaysia, UM and UPSI, as far as I know, UITM, they all have their own sort of mode of choice, you know, for the student learning.
Yeah, internal platforms.
But then the added advantage that we have here, I mean, the Hong Kong government has spent about 20 million ringgit equivalent in developing the internet center for the student learning. So when I arrived at the school, this is really the training of every new teacher that comes here. And I'm really, you know, fairly computer illiterate. So this has really been, you know, sink or swim. So it's very exciting, very exciting. Yeah, and I really want to continue to do this, you know, although I can't wait for the students to come back on the corridor and, you know, give them a big hug and share a meal with them and watch them dance in front of me. But I know that I will continue to use this as a learning tool.
Yeah. And one more question, Prof, from Melanie Chalel. With this pandemic, and for parents, how would we convince prospective students and their parents to sign up for such degrees, sort of pandemic-proof careers? Is there such a pandemic-proof career?
Well, this is a very, very fantastic question because right now we are in the midst of our intake for the new batch of students. And the reality is that the numbers have gone down drastically, not just because it's an effect of the pandemic, but also as an effect of the demonstrations before that. So parents are hesitant to send their children here. And if their child, I mean, I'm sad to say, this is the reality. If their child gets good enough grades to go to Hong Kong U and study medicine, and they come to me for an audition, I'm saying, go to Hong Kong U and study medicine, you know? You can dance in the meantime. Hong Kong U has a great extracurricular dance program. You can enjoy yourself. You can do all the hip hop and break dancing you want. But the reality is a lot of graduates coming out of university today are going to be unemployed. And if I was a parent, I don't want my child to be unemployed, you know? This is the reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the reality. I think the reality as well in a lot of the other industries. I mean, the hospitality industry, the airlines industry, tourism.
But I think even in the best of times, you know, like Mark was talking about, in the best of times, arts has always been suffering. We suffer to get audiences. We suffer to get funding. We're just suffering, but we just love it. We just sort of, you know,
kill me now.
You know, you know. So we in an institution, I'm very, very fortunate because I have a stable income and I have a salary at the end of every month. So my heart reaches out to those who are working independently. And I think
Yes.
they must be placed at the forefront of our conversation. What are we doing for them? And it's very, very fantastic because here at the university, you know, right at the start, they talked about how we're going to create a crisis fund for our alumni. Or we're going to give them some money, we're going to get the alumni to come back, we're going to give them the space for free. You know how expensive space is in Hong Kong. So we're going to give them the space so that they can work on their creativity at the moment. When it opens, we'll give them a platform to stage their work and so on. And then we're trying to get them in to employ them more as part-time, you know, as part-time teachers whenever possible. We're just engaging them constantly because we have their, you know, we have their best interest at heart. You know, we're in a very, very comfortable place being full-time salaried employees in this industry, you know? So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Joseph.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Vic. Vic is joining us from London. Vic, are you there?
I am indeed. Hello.
Hi. Hi, Vic. Good morning.
Hi.
So, can you share your thoughts? How are things in London?
Very good. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, how are things in London? Well, it's an interesting one. We obviously have quite an extended industry here in comparison perhaps with some of the other countries that are represented here today, although Hong Kong also does have quite an extensive you know, industry. But we're reeling. I think the industry is pretty much come to standstill. And as we speak, I think the UK is leading in all the wrong ways in terms of illness and deaths in the country. So let me go to the challenges I guess we're having. Firstly, it happened so quickly, as everybody said, that you know, we had to make immediate decisions based on very little information. And I think the first and the biggest thing we do here at Lambda particularly, and also I think with other industry, you know, friends and colleagues, is that as arts educators, we are first and foremost, our duty is to support the student journey, the student experience, the student's learning experience, and then of course it's a care of duty for our staff, it's care of duty for the people who, our colleagues who work in the building with us, who may not be who may not be directly delivering the arts, but our support network. And when it came to the fact that we wouldn't be able to come into the building, you know, everything, it turned on a dime, quite literally, as for most people, I think. And maybe we were a lot more, I think there was a bit more shock here. Why that would be, I don't know, given that Europe was suffering. So there's a slightly weird, you know, mindset at the moment in the UK. Although we haven't had riots like, as Joseph was saying, in Hong Kong, Brexit has taken quite a lot of air out of people's, you know, brain space. So this has come in a different way. I think our psyches are a little bit tired. So I think the challenges that we face, certainly from both the student and the tutor side, is that for me personally, and I'm not speak about anybody else, is that I think there is a level of trauma attached to the fact that what we know isn't potentially available, certainly in the short to medium term. And I think that is quite a big thing to wrap your head around. So, and if you, I liked what Mark was talking about in terms of looking at things in bite-sized pieces in arts education, but I think that's actually a good thing for life as well, because if you pull back and look at the long shot of what the world might look like in a year or 2 years' time, it's too much. I can't cope with the nebulousness of what's out there at the moment. And so I think it is much, so that's my strategy, I think, with both for myself and for the students, to close up rather than close myself up, but to look at life in close up, to what is the next thing I can do. And it can be with the students as something as simple as, well, learn your lines for these next few scenes that we're going to be working on. Don't look further beyond that. The challenges are manifold. Joseph touched on this in terms of space, in terms of the tech elements. Some people don't have the necessary tech. Here in the UK, there's been a big push in the last, it's a cyclical thing in which we're trying to encourage more people, more diversity into the arts landscape, and diversity not just in terms of gender, in terms of race, in terms of sexuality, but also in terms of socioeconomic situations. And having done that, now we're saying you've got to go home and work on your laptop. What if you don't have a laptop? What if you're living in a home with 20, well, not 20, but many other people all sharing the same laptops? So the problems are manifold. And we've tried really hard to mitigate for some of those things and make plans based on as many scenarios as we possibly can. The biggest challenge there is that given that we don't quite know from day to day what the government's position is, these plans are constantly evolving. So specifically for us, what ended up happening was we stopped face-to-face teaching in the middle of March, and that came to pretty much it was the end of our term, and therefore we could not graduate, but rather we could do all the things that we needed to do for that term. Then we had 3 weeks off in which we strategized about what we might do. And now we've been teaching for 3 weeks. And like everybody else has talked about, we've had to look at different ways of teaching. I think the what are we teaching? How are we going to do that? And what the response is going to be. It's a new landscape. So we were all learning as we go along. And the thing that I think we put in front center was the student experience, and the students became, we do this anyway in the training, that I don't consider my students a student. We're professional colleagues. We just happen to be at different parts of our journey, different places in our journey. And so the feedback, I think, is really useful to get back from the student what they are getting, what's working, what's not working, and we're constantly reviewing what it is that we do, what is keeping them engaged, and I think the idea that if I was feeling the trauma of not being able to practice my art, then the student, the learning actor, was having a similar thing, So that's what we did. I think we went into phase 1, I think, which is us working quite a lot of things online. Primarily, I think, in my own work, I would say that, agreeing with Joe, it'll never replace face-to-face working. However, there is an element of the early table work in a rehearsal room that you can do with people in a group. What you don't get is the human interaction in terms of relationships. But the nice thing is that where we stopped, the groups have already bonded slightly, so they know each other. They are able to work in groups. Zoom's got an amazing breakout room, as Joseph has already said, and we often meet together, and people are sent away, and I can pop into their rooms, they can send me answers, and we try and do that sort of work. How the future is going to look like, I believe blended learning will be the way forward for the immediate future. I think the performing arts, particularly for acting and theatre, it will never not be live, because that is the nature of it. It's a communion between audience and artist. But given that we are looking at a near future of social distancing, what is going to work and how it's going to work remains to be seen. But I think there will be a phased way of bringing people in. We are in the process also, as Joseph was saying, of recalls for the next intake. So redefining or recalibrating what the process is going to be. And unlike Joseph, we did write to, we offered to the people who we still had, I don't know, close to 1,000 people who wanted to still audition, and said that we would, not hold auditions, if they wanted to, and everyone chose to audition. So, so it's been interesting to look back at that process and try to find new ways of doing it. And a lot of that is in these platforms, of self-tapes. But yes, I think the future is about a level of blended learning, even in the near future. And there is an element of curiosity in the technical ways of working. And as Joseph said, I'm learning stuff. As everybody says, we're learning different ways of what works. And ultimately, can you then fast track use the time in the room together to do the most fecund, explorations. To be seen, to be confirmed as we go along. I think it's a morphing process.
Yeah. Yes, definitely agree with you, Vic, because I think as well, as we're going through this journey, the amount of innovation and IT and platforms that are being established and created and, being available now is also growing as we speak. I mean, who thought about Zoom and all a few months ago?
Completely.
Yeah. Thanks, Vic. Can I also share a question by Eddie Hashim with you? How can we organize art education activities during this time?
I think the biggest thing we found, or I found, is that there is a level of responsibility that the actor gets to take, perhaps earlier than they would in traditional training. And what we can do is encourage them to take those responsibilities for their craft. So, for example, if they are looking at theoretical stuff, that most importantly for me, it's about questioning what is it that they're seeing, and it's about developing aesthetic. I think Farid touched on this earlier. There's such a glut of things at the moment. Reading, writing. The National Theatre's put all their productions online, and to be perfectly honest, at some point it becomes too much. But I think that the consumption doesn't mean, unlike paying £60 to go and see a piece of theatre in the West End, you can pause this, watch a little bit, and come back to it, and you can train yourself, your sense of your ability to stay and to glean information from these things. Now is a good time to do that. You are able to consume in small chunks. You don't have to sit in the theatre for the entire time and then come out and try and remember. You can stop, go back and look at things, and that's been useful for the students. We set easy tasks to go. What did you like? What did you not like? And the why is really important for me. My students are always rolling their eyes because I am just, that's great, but why? No one starts out to make bad theatre. Why? What happened? And what is your question? And getting them to understand what they like and how they think it comes across, I think, is really important. So so those are the activities that we're doing. Some of it is practical, some of it is discursive, but in a way, the sense of being able to pinpoint and close up into what is necessary or what is important to them, I think, is what I'm trying to encourage discourse on.
Yes, and I think the independent learner will also emerge when you have more of these sort of activities.
Completely.
Can we have one more question? Maybe I'll open this. We'll have we have a few questions coming in. So maybe we'll just, since everybody has shared their thoughts, maybe we'll just open this up to everyone. I've got a question from Candy Ng. What can we replace and cannot replace on online classes? Maybe Joseph, if you would like to share your thoughts on that. What is suitable to share online and what do you think should be shared more face-to-face?
Well, I think I know that Candy is a dance teacher, so
oh,
yeah,
see, I asked the right person.
Yeah. So it's a small world, and I think the reality is, and further compounded by the fact that living spaces in Hong Kong are so small that we really cannot even try to, or we shouldn't even attempt to do any of the, the movements and the repertoire that involves space and energy when they live in very small confined spaces. So the idea is, how can they do, static stretching, or how can they do something that's that only maybe requires the amount of space of a yoga mat at home, and make that a daily practice. I think the important thing is about also trying to embed into the students that they need to find their own daily routine for themselves in any time. The luxury of being a student is that you get daily class. That's what you pay for, and that's what's given to you. But when you leave the industry, daily class is not something that you can get very easily, and this is something I'm constantly going on about my graduates, wherever they may be, that why is it professional dancers don't think they need to do class anymore? You don't keep your technique up just with rehearsal, which is why we have Ask Dance Company, blah, blah, blah. And then, I'm not, hanging myself, but that's okay. Yeah, so we let them view repertoire, we let them understand what they're going to be doing. They can get a little bit more contextual knowledge, but when they come back, they need to use the space, and they need to do their grand allegros, and they need to, do the partnering work, and they need to eat up the space like we tell them to, So this is what we desire as teachers. So they need to come back, and we want them to come back. And so these things cannot be replaced. And also, I didn't mention the things like a floor. Having a good floor is so vital and critical to dance training. I know if there's anyone here like from the Temple of Fine Arts, they may disagree with me because they always stamp their floor on cement, in the old days. I mean, they got good floors now, right? But here, floors are vital to dance training. We've got the most expensive Harlequin, triple layer, I don't know what. But this is what, referring to Veronica just now, I mean, I'm drooling, Veronica, since I came to Hong Kong 4 years ago. I'm just like in tears constantly, looking at the amount that the government wants to invest in the arts, in training, in spaces. I mean, they're building, although some of the buildings take 20 years to get built, but they do build. West Kowloon, the cultural center, the renovations at Tai Kwun in Central. I mean, they have converted these spaces into thriving, active hubs of arts activity, and it runs into the millions and millions. But I must say, it's not just the government, it's also the corporate sector. It's individual people who are coming forth and paying. So, we get students annually. We have a student, a day where we honor the funders. And seriously, from one ball that we throw, we get an equivalent of 2 million ringgit of sponsorship for our students, just one night. People come, and that's how they give. And this is just a one-off, but people are constantly, so we have, let's say, a Li Ka-shing scholar, and then we have, they have this, even the artists, all of them have a specific name according to whoever has funded them. So the whole mindset of arts funding and investment into arts education, and we get staff development so that they will pay for us to up to about 20,000 a year for us to go and learn something, Yeah, so, and it's something that's open to everybody. I think private universities and all have it. I mean, I never had that luxury in Aswara, so I'm really, really enjoying myself now. It's, payback time for myself, Yeah, so this is incredible.
Thanks. Mark or Vic, would you like to share about some, just to carry forward Joseph's point about the funding available? educators to have access to some of these funds to develop their skills, to develop tools?
Were you talking to me,
Yeah.
Prerna? Well, continuing professional development is encouraged in the UK. We tend to take it on board ourselves more than there's some guided stuff within the organization in terms of acquiring professional qualifications, because a lot of the tutors, a lot of people that work for us are artists who come through that, and so they may not have had formal education in terms of degrees and things like that. So there is that a route, but the reality is that the arts is funded in this country, but it's never enough. As always, and we happen to be in a time where we have a Tory government that has decimated arts education in schools, and the arts itself is marginalized. I mean, since this pandemic, the government has not really talked about that, and most artists are freelancers, most artists are self-employed people, and they are the people who are falling through the cracks in terms of any kind of government-led initiative to keep people on. So the organization has taken on some of that in trying to work with the artists that we work with, but generally, I think we are. It can seem incredibly bleak at the moment. All theatres are shut. I mean, this is London, one of, if not the cultural capital of the world. Theatres are dark all around the country. No work is being produced. The most heavily funded theatres are looking potentially at not just months, but a few months of reserves. So it's quite a bleak landscape, and within this landscape, we as an arts education institution, we're training actors. So there is an existential question that we're all asking ourselves. It feeds back into that trauma. I mean, it's as opposed to Germany's response to the pandemic. I think 6 weeks ago they put, I can't remember what, but it was in the tens of millions into the culture, with the culture minister talking about how necessary artists are in order to make the world go forward. So the grass is always greener on the other side, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone else always responds better to the situation. However, potentially the superpower, the superpower of artists, I think, is the fact that we are self-employed and we are freelancers, which means that we will probably be able to survive this much more than someone who is not, who is unused to unemployment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that balance of the skills is so important.
Very much so.
Thanks, Chaco and Joseph have been dying to ask this question. I see very long questions on will audiences pay for online shows? Joe, Farida, with a lot of international plays and all being accessible, will audiences pay?
Hi, Chaco. Thank you for the question. I read your question and I thought, trust Chaco to write a bloody epistle. But no, will they pay? Well, you see, that's a very difficult question to answer, because worldwide, we are getting all these amazing programs free of charge. Almost. Well, a lot of them are free of charge. We're getting Broadway shows. We're getting shows from the UK. We're getting shows from from Europe. We're getting shows from everywhere. And only recently, we have started airing some of our past productions, or only one at the moment, which is Kandang. Do we hope to make any money out of it? Boy, I don't know. I mean, we will certainly be plugging for donations, and who will benefit from these donations? What we have come up with is a system, if we do get money in, that those people who were always thought of last, the performers, right, will get a share of whatever money comes in. Because let's face it, if you don't have the actors, you don't have the dancers, you don't have the musicians, you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have a show. So I can't give you a short answer to your question, Prema, because unless Farida, you have an idea.
I think it's too early in our lives, this COVID-19, to be making such a predicament, such a prediction. Further down our lives, when it becomes more a solid part of our living, I'm sure that question can be asked again, and there probably will be some money in online shows for the world of the arts.
But you see, as many of Joseph has said this, Vic has said this today, that ultimately theatre and dance is to be enjoyed live, you know, and why would someone pay, unless they missed a show that they really desperately wanted to see, why would they pay to see it on the screen, online? It's not something we can count on.
Yeah, thank you. But I think on a positive note, that I think it is all these online productions that are being aired, I think has given people more accessibility to the arts. It's not seen as the elite sort of experience anymore. I think that's one thing that I've noticed, is that a lot of people.
But my darling, that does not, unfortunately, help all of the art of work performers, whether they be.
Yes. No, I'm talking about societal.
Society in general, they are benefiting from it. Unfortunately, the people who created it are not benefiting from it at all.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So before we end, thank you to all our panelists for your insights and topic. And we have noted at least 5 key strategies for arts education that needs to be set in place from the panelists in our discussion today. In post-pandemic arts, embedding e-learning of arts education, the flexibility in the curriculum, right? To equip arts educators with the tools for training to enhance their teaching, and also to have assessment tasks in smaller bite-sized forms. Yeah, I think these are some of the 5 key takeaways that we can incorporate into the development of arts programs. So before ending today, I'd like to say thank you to our distinguished panelists and for sharing your thoughts. I would also like to say thank you to our technical team who has been working behind the scenes for your support, and our participants for being very engaging in our chat box and posting your questions. For those who, some of the questions which we haven't had the time to answer, we will definitely reach out to you, and you can also, we will also respond on the Facebook live chat on the comments column. And as quoted by Alan Watt, the only way to make sense of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. On that note, From all of us at the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Taylor's University, stay safe, healthy, and we hope to see you at our next series. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Joe. Bye, Farida.
Bye, Joseph.
Bye,
Bye,
Jeff.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Joe. Bye, Farida.
Bye,
Joseph.
Farida.
Bye.
Bye, Joe.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Joseph. Bye.
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 Bye, Joe. Bye, Farida. Thank you. Sorry I came in late from a work meeting, but it was great. Thanks.
I think you won't notice you were.
Much, everybody.
Sorry? What?